I started it. Haribol. It's already doing it. Yeah. Okay. Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga. Gandharvika Giridhari. Shri Shri Radha Vinod Vihari Jiyo. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Jiyo Ki Jai. Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakra Jiyo Ki Jai. Jai Shri Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Shri Nitai Gauranga Ki Jai. Shri Shringa Bhagavan Ki Jai. Shri Laisi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Nananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem Se Baho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Govardhan Radha Shivanatmaka Shri Braj Mandala Dham Ki Jai. Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Yamuna Ganga Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Braj Mandala Shri Gaura Mandala Shri Kshetra Mandala Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. I'm thinking, because yesterday was Sri Jayadev Goswami's day. Did you read anything?
I did, yes. I mean, where did you read that from? Oh, you know what it was? I was doing the Bhakti Art Illuminations book, and it was all the section of Gita Govinda. And Jayadev Goswami, so there's a whole history.
And all the paintings and
paintings.
So you were reading the descriptions.
So that's how I observed it.
Wow, that's nectar. So yeah, either I can continue with what I'm reading, Uday Shamrita Bhakti Vinod Thakur, or I can get my laptop and read from about Jayadev Goswami. Which one would you prefer? Because you've already read about Jayadev Goswami, so probably. Okay. We'll continue with that then.
I didn't check the Vaishnava calendar to see if this was a special day of any kind.
No, I don't think. But yesterday was his day.
Yes.
So at some point I'm going to make that up. So many days coming now.
Especially next a week from tomorrow.
That's right. And so many things are lining up for Gurudev's Vyas Puja. They have, did you hear about the 55-hour non-stop Katha that they're organizing from London? Vishodhanandan and this one younger Indian-bodied British devotee, a disciple of Gurudev, Yashodhari, she contacted me and she's kind of organizing, putting the whole thing together for 50 non-stop hours of Katha. And so they want to fit me in there, and then also Delhi temple, Ramachandra Prabhu, they're having a 3-day festival, and so they want to fit me in. I was just discussing with them today. What it might be is, because they're 8 hours ahead of us, London is. Jai Jai Shri Radhe Govinda Jai Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu Ki Jai Hari Hari Bol. So I kind of worked it out with them that because they were giving me slots that were too late our time, like 9:30 at night and like that. I said that I can't do. So what it is I got them to bring it down to like 7:30. And because they're a day ahead of us, so That would
be on Wednesday.
Yeah, it would be on the day before, because they're doing it starting on the 10th. And so it would be the evening of the 9th when I would do that one. Or was that? Yeah, that was the Delhi temple one. They're, what is it, 11 and a half hours or something ahead? 12 and a half hours.
Or actually 13 and a half.
Okay, yeah, something like that. I was looking online and I worked it out that 7:30 at night. The class, I'll give my class a little bit later. We can do the artik first on that night. And then I'll speak. That'll be.
I see, so it'll be live, okay.
It'll be live here. And I'll have to use my phone for the Zoom thing. I just did a Zoom thing, conference for the first time, a few days back. The Russian devotees organized it, and it was very good. I used my phone for the hotspot for my laptop, and I downloaded Zoom onto both, and so I've done it. And it's actually really nice, because you can see all the people, you know who's there, and you can click on any one of their pictures and talk to them personally, and you know.
And whoever speaks, they fill up the screen.
Yeah, yeah. So, Gurudev Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namah. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubheva Cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaura Tvishe Namah. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vrindai Tulsi Devi Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. My Dandavat pranams to the lotus feet of my beloved Siksha and Diksha Gurudevs Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupad Paramahansa Statarasata Sri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupad Paramahansa Statarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj and Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupad Paramahansa Astatarasata Sri Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. My Dandavat pranams to all my Shri Shri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga. My Dandavat pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis. We're continuing with the section, still for the last item, the 12th item, Sato Vritte, Sadhu Vritti, very long, so many shlokas quoted. Actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is quoting from Chaitanya Charitamrita for most of the principles that he's citing. Then he's quoting from Chaitanya Charitamrita and others, but mostly Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he's elaborating and showing that Mahaprabhu himself, in his Leelas, has exhibited such and such dealings and statements and behavior, all of that. So yesterday we began to read the section, the necessity for both householders and renunciants to be compassionate to others and to serve sadhus, two things. And this is applying to both, because we've gone through many sections of householders, and then also for renunciants. But in this case, the great necessity for both householders and renunciants to be compassionate to others and to serve sadhus. So he's telling one is to constantly endeavor to imbibe all the good qualities necessary to perform bhajan. One must constantly endeavor to imbibe these good qualities. And he says that the behavior of Vaishnavas has been described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 7, chapter 7, verse 72. And you'll be familiar with this particular point, is that Mahanubhaver Chitter Swabhav E Hoy. Pushpamoya Komala Katin Vajramoy. That the heart of a Vaishnava is soft like a flower and hard like a thunderbolt. So there's, what I told the devotees yesterday is that really to study this, you'll then have to open up Chaitanya Charitamrita to that exact reference. And then you're going to have to read, a lot of shlokas before and after, and so you know the whole context of it, right? But I remember, this is from Madhya Lila, chapter 7, and I think this is when Mahaprabhu was leaving for South India. Anyway, but I remember when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was leaving for South India, and the devotees were following him when he was leaving Puri. And you remember where he came up to? Alalnath. Yes, they followed him all the way to Alalnath. And at that point, he told them, you cannot follow me any further. And then he began walking away, and the devotees stood there and fell down on the ground, practically fainted. Right? And then this quote was given, that the heart of a great Vaishnava is both soft like a flower and also hard like a thunderbolt, for the execution of their transcendental activities. And we've seen that, have we not? We've witnessed it directly in all of our great Mahabhagavad Vaishnavas, Srila Prabhupada especially, So they, at the same time, they can have this softness, but then, if required, like a thunderbolt. Yeah. So then he goes on. He says, Mahanta Swabhav E Tarite Pamar. This is the compassion of the Vaishnava. Nija Karya Nahi Tabu Jana Tar Ghar. It is the nature of Mahapurushas, great personalities, to visit the homes of the fallen for the sake of delivering them. And in doing this, they do not possess even the slightest tinge of selfishness. Tarite Pamar. It is their Mahanta Swabhav, it is their nature, that they want to give compassion and visit the homes of the fallen persons so that they can deliver them. Nija Karya Nahi. There is no personal interest involved whatsoever, not even a tinge. And then he quotes the verse from Madhya Lila 11, that Prabhu Kohe, this is after Sarvabhaum pleaded with the Lord to bestow mercy upon King Prataparudra. It's in this context. And this is in the context of how a vow should be taken, right? So you know how there was the whole, I was describing this yesterday, the whole drama of the various devotees approaching. And finally, here's where Sarvabhauma was pleading with the Lord to bestow mercy. And up to that point, there had already been attempts, and Mahaprabhu was even threatening to leave Puri, right? So, at this point then, Mahaprabhu said to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Kaho to me. Speak. Nahi kichu bhai. Don't have any fear. Jogya hoile koribo, ajogya hoile nai. He said, I will do it if it is possible, otherwise not. So this is in the context of how a vow should be taken. Interesting. Huh? Because Mahaprabhu is going to make a promise. But yet, he's considering whether or not this can happen, right? So don't be afraid, Sarvabhauma. Tell me, what is your idea? You know? And I will do it if it's possible, but otherwise I won't, if it's not possible. Then the next section says, one should deal affectionately with Vaishnavas, for by this Krishna is satisfied. So I actually went and looked up the reference. It's from Madhya Lila chapter 11, and he's talking to Ramananda Roy actually. And he's saying to Ramananda Roy, Prabhu kahe tumi Krishna Bhakta Pradhan. Bhakta Pradhan means you are the chief amongst all the devotees. Krishna Bhakta Pradhan. Tomake je priti kore se bhagyavan. One who is affectionate to you is most fortunate. So this is in reference to how Krishna becomes satisfied when one deals affectionately with Vaishnavas. And Mahaprabhu is using the Ramananda Roy as a reference, that anyone who has affection to you is most fortunate. Then, the mood of strong determination of a devotee who is endowed with loving attachment to the Lord has been described as follows. Strong determination of a devotee, the mood of strong determination, who is endowed with loving attachment to the Lord, it has been described as follows. And this is Nityananda Prabhu talking to Mahaprabhu. And Madhya Lila chapter 12. So chapter 12 is Rath Yatra chapter, I think. So Nityananda Prabhu is saying, Kintu anuragi loker swabhav ek hoy ishta na paile nija pran se chadai. So Nityananda is saying to Mahaprabhu, the nature of devotees endowed with loving attachment, anurag, it is such that they are willing to give up their body if they are unable to attain their worshipful object. Yeah, I think this is in reference to how Nityananda was telling Mahaprabhu that the king, he's ready to give up his body. You know, he cannot tolerate living without having your mercy. Now the next section is titled Giving Instructions Only After Practicing Them Oneself, and also the necessity of purity of heart. So these are two separate but connected instructions. To give instructions after practicing oneself, and also the necessity of purity of heart. So instructing others through good character. Now in reference to that, instructing others through good character, Madhya Lila chapter 12 again is being cited, and Mahaprabhu is speaking. Tumi balo koriacho, shika ho anyere, e mata balo karma seho jeno kore. Mahaprabhu said, you have performed very good service. Teach the same to others, and through this, they also will come to serve nicely. Now you know what that's in reference to? Kundicha. When Mahaprabhu, it was describing how Mahaprabhu was reciprocating with the different devotees who were cleaning. And when he saw a devotee who was doing well, right, then he would encourage them. Oh, very good. You perform very good service. Now you should teach the same to others. And through this, they also will come to serve nicely. Okay? So that's encouraging those who were actually doing it. So this is in reference to giving instructions only after practicing them oneself. This is a very important principle, isn't it? In spiritual life. Yeah. We've seen the opposite so much.
And the result.
And the result. Yeah. It's actually, you can't really surpass this instruction. If someone tries to do it, it will not have the effect. You know, I remember Srila Sridhar Maharaj told a story of one of his godbrothers, disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who was in Grihastha ashram, and he began to accept disciples. He was obviously an elevated soul. And so one of his disciples, in the course of advancing, he then approached to his guru that I want to take the renounced order of life. Right? You ever heard this story?
No.
Yeah. And then the guru, because he's being asked to give sannyas, but he himself has not taken. So that disciple of Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told the disciple to wait some time. And then he went, the guru went and took sannyas. And then he gave sannyas to his disciple. So, but even in ordinary instructions, they'll not actually have the desired result unless someone is himself practicing. You can't tell others because the potency of your instruction will not be there. And I think that has been borne out so many times over these decades that we see that it's an indelible principle that mood of sincerity, honesty, truthfulness, purity of heart, as it says here, has to be there. Otherwise, how can you instruct someone to do something that you yourself are not doing? You know, even in the material world, you know, people are very sensitive to instructions, especially younger people. You know, like if their parents are saying, "You should not smoke." I remember I was growing up like this. And both my parents were smoking cigarettes like that. My father had to give it up because he got a heart attack at one point, but my mother kept on, you know. And we would always complain, sitting in the car, how do you go? Sitting in the car, and they're smoking in the middle of the winter, the windows are rolled up, and we said, you know, we would just scream, my two sisters and I, you know. And so we would have had to be subjected to that. But they would also mention, so, you know, you should not smoke. Yeah?
But the principle, you've probably heard of Machiavelli.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called The Prince. Now, he was actually being, in a sense, sarcastic and ridiculing, but people took it as actually good instruction. And what he said is quite the opposite. He said, oh, you must act like a very pious and moral person. And then behind the scenes, you must be the complete opposite. You must be ruthless, immoral, and in that way you'll become empowered. And I saw this really up front.
Empowered by who?
Kali Maharaj.
Yes,
because
the thing.
I saw that, you know, I don't want to tell personalities, but
yeah.
I saw it, people who were actually taking drugs and having the most horrific kind, most debased, illicit affairs, were sitting on the Vyasa-san and yelling at the audience about the filth of this and the degradation of that. I just think, wow, it's just like, this is how you become empowered by Kali Maharaj, but in Lord Chaitanya's movement, which Prabhupada's ISKCON, Lord Chaitanya's movement, certainly some things were transpiring that then brought them way down.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, well, ultimately, all of that deviation culminated in the Maha Aparad against Srila Sridhar Maharaj, you see. And then everything was ruined. So, yeah, I mean, that's the principle of the demons. What you were mentioning about the Machiavellian thing. But in terms of actual pure spiritual potency, really, someone cannot preach and tell someone to follow such and such unless they themselves are following it. So that's point is being made very strongly here by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he's citing the example of Mahaprabhu. And you know, in that same pastime, Mahaprabhu would also deal, this is the Gundicha temple, you know, the story of Mahaprabhu cleaning the Gundicha temple where Lord Jagannath will come on the Rath Yatra, and they're using brooms, and it's all vividly described in this chapter, just before the Rath Yatra chapter. And but Mahaprabhu himself was cleaning, and he was cleaning more vigorously than any of the others. But when he saw a person who wasn't cleaning properly, he would come and sarcastically say to him, "Oh, you are doing very good." Like that. But when he saw someone that was actually doing good, then he was telling him like this: "You perform very good service, teach the same to others, and through this they also will come to serve nicely." So that's the principle being given here. Then he said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is going on and he says, "It is necessary to make earnest efforts in bhajan and in sadhana." So now this is a quote from Madhya Lila chapter 24, which is Sanatan Siksha. Lord Chaitanya is teaching Sanatan Goswami. Jai Jai Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. So, Mahaprabhu is telling to Sanatan Goswami, "Jatna graha bina bhakti na janmai preme." So, this means Krishna prem can never arise without making special efforts in bhajan sadhana. Jatna graha. Jatna graha means endeavoring, you know, heavy endeavor. Bina bhakti na janmai prem. Without making special efforts in bhajan sadhana, Krishna prem can never arise. So that means that one will have to gradually advance from the lower stages into the intermediate stages, and gradually, and the intensity of one's endeavor will also gradually, automatically manifest. But even in the early stages, we see that that's the road to success, actually, isn't it? Even in the neophyte stage, if somebody is earnestly making their endeavors. So I remember Prabhupada, he used to say to all of us, because we were young then, and say, "You should use your youthful energy fully in the service of Krishna," you know, because we had a lot of youthful energy.
Singing and dancing on the streets.
Oh yeah, and we used it up fully, you know, even beyond our capacity practically. You know, and I remember that when I was young and I heard Prabhupada say like that. Yeah, I guess, yeah, we have this youthful energy. And Prabhupada was engaging it. But now it's 50 years later. That youthful energy is gone, at least in this body that I'm currently occupying. So,
at heart.
Huh?
I think at heart you still seem pretty
Well, at heart, that's the thing. That's all you have left. When the physical ability is gradually dwindling, then that's all you have left. And then all you can do is just lie down and chant. Just, you know. But certainly Krishna Prem, it will have to come, one will have to make very special efforts in sadhana bhajan. So we have the examples. So many examples of our acharyas who make superhuman efforts, practically speaking, you know. That is they are demonstrating the goal. Then the next point is, the association of logicians is to be completely given up. So this is from Madhya Lila chapter 12. And this is when by the mercy of Srimad Mahaprabhu, the heart of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was transformed and he became blissful due to Krishna Bhakti, then he said the following. That's in that context, right? So here's the Bengali. Tarkika Shrigala Sange Beu Kori Se Muke Ebe Sada Kohi Krishna Hari. So what this means, he said, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was one of the greatest logicians and scholars in all of India. He lived in Puri, and when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, and after that he journeyed to Puri right away after his sannyas. And there he met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. You might have heard the pastime where Mahaprabhu fainted in front of Jagannath. See, he went actually there were 4 people traveling with him, Mukunda, Nityananda Prabhu. They were traveling all the way from Bengal by foot, all the way to Puri. But then Nityananda Prabhu broke the sannyas staff of Mahaprabhu and into 3 pieces, and he threw it in the river. That's a whole story in itself, because he considered that Mahaprabhu should not be having to carry an ordinary bamboo rod like mortal persons of this world. You see, even though Mahaprabhu wanted to follow these principles in his human-like pastimes, but Nityananda Prabhu could not tolerate, and Nityananda Prabhu is Guru Tattva. He is Guru Tattva personified, right? So, so then Nityananda, one evening before they were going to proceed to Puri, they were actually just a few miles away from Jagannath Puri at that point. And then the next morning, Mahaprabhu asked Nityananda, "Where is my sannyas danda?" And then he said, Nityananda, "Oh, I fell on it by mistake and it broke, so I threw it into the river." And when he told that to Mahaprabhu, then Mahaprabhu became upset. And this is Lord Vishnu personified, and you've done this. I'm going on my own. You will all have to stay behind. So it was like an excuse, and Nityananda Prabhu, you know, there's also a purport by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur talking about why Nityananda Prabhu broke it into 3 pieces. You know that?
From Ekadanda to
Yes, Ekadanda was just one rod, and then Nityananda Prabhu broke it into 3 pieces, and then he threw it into the river there. They actually have right on that same place, ISKCON purchased that land, Gaur Govinda Maharaj's disciples, and it's called Dandabanga. They made a whole ashram there.
very nice ashram.
Very nice ashram, yeah. So, if you read the purport of Prabhupada's also, he's quoting Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who's explaining that Nityananda Prabhu, actually, by this act, he was indicating that now, in this parampara, there should be no more ekadanda, and then the sannyasis, they should have tridanda, 3 rods, right? And so that's why Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he took sannyas, before he took sannyas, he actually, he had even gone to South India, and he had consulted with various acharyas of the Ramanuja Sampradaya and so forth, and studied ancient texts. And so it's actually there in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Tridandi Yati, the Tridandi Sannyasi, in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam. So Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, he revived that and introduced the Tridanda Sannyas again. And so that's why in Gaudiya Math and in our line, the Tridandi Sannyas is now practiced. Which means what?
Body, mind, and words.
That's right, that's 3. But you know there's actually a 4th. There's actually 4. Although it's called a Tridanda, there are 4 bamboos that are wrapped. And the 4th one has been added for Atma, the soul.
Is that the little one?
No, it's an actual rod, and that has been added to the Tridanda. It represents the Atma, the soul. So full, absolute self-surrender. That little thing, the short that is wrapped on the top, is described as being for uprooting the anarthas, for like uprooting them. So, and of course, this is considered to be none different than Vishnu, and the sannyasi carries this rod and can even offer his bhog, like to a deity form.
Now, does he only have to carry it for 10 years?
Well, that's what I was about to say, is that, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that. He mentioned that the sannyasi should carry Tridanda for 10 years, and then after that, they don't have to anymore. And so, in the way that it happened in Gurudev's personal presence, is that we were always carrying on the airplanes everywhere, But all of a sudden, I think it was just after 9/11 incident, and then all the airlines began to change their policies about luggage, because previously we were able to not pay anything, and they would carry it as oversized baggage, and then you'd have to go to the place where the oversized baggage comes. And we all had these plastic pipes that we slid it into, and so it wasn't going to break or anything. And then, but after that, then they began, all of a sudden, they just completely changed it, and they wanted to charge $150. So at that point, then there was a couple of things that happened, especially Sajjan Maharaj. He wanted to invent you have a pool cue.
Collapsible.
Collapsible, but not collapsible, you actually take it apart. You have 3, right? Then you can fit it into your luggage. So he consulted with Gurudev. We all consulted with Gurudev and told him what the problem is now, that we're not going to be able to carry. Then there was an idea that, we can keep in other countries, like countries that we're visiting, we can keep a danda there. Because even during ISKCON time, sometimes they did that, right? So then, from that, then they started, because we were also going to China at that time, and we were going undercover, So with regular clothing, we would only wear the sannyas dress in the programs, that we're holding, and that would be very secretive. So then at that point, I even had one put together from some of these plastic piping, and we did that, right? But then I think to myself, what is this? You know what Gurudev said? He said, yes, okay, you can do, and you can consider this your pratibhu expansion of your danda. The pratibhu expansions are like the deities that are in Vrindavan currently, who replaced the deities that were taken to Jaipur, the original. But they're considered non-different. They're called pratibhu expansions. Not only that, but the term Pratibhu expansion is also used for indicating Srimati Radhika's personal bodily expansions, like the Ashtasakis and so forth. These are Pratibhu. So Gurudev used that term. He says, all right, then you can consider these to be your Pratibhu expansions. So at that point, it was almost 10 years anyway, at that point, that I was able to continue to carry the danda. And then that all happened with the airlines charging such exorbitant rates. So then we just stopped.
I mean, if you would bring it into China, wouldn't they ask immigration, what is this that you're bringing into China? I mean, if
we weren't bringing it into China at any time. We weren't bringing it along to China. To other countries, we were bringing it. You know, we would leave it in Hong Kong, and then from Hong Kong we'd go into China. So we would leave. In fact, that's where my danda is, in Hong Kong. You know, so. And then I have another one that we made so that I can use it on parikrama in India. You know, I keep it in Vrindavan in my room there, you see. So, anyway, to finish this point, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, okay, I was telling about how Mahaprabhu went alone, he went ahead. And in the mood of Srimati Radhika, of course, this happened naturally. It happened in that way in the Leela, because Baladev Prabhu cannot go with Krishna when Srimati Radhika is meeting with Krishna. Baladev, the older brother, so Nityananda is Baladev. So it happened in that way, very appropriately, that Mahaprabhu went ahead. And Mahaprabhu was running, and he was in the mood of Srimati Radhika, going to see Krishna where? At Kurukshetra. And then Mahaprabhu ran into the Jagannath temple and ran all the way, and just be in front of the altar of Jagannath, he was in ecstasy, he was dancing, and he was chanting Krishna's names in the mood of Srimati Radhika, and he fainted. And then there are temple guards in the Puri temple, you know, that if any disturbance is there, they have to remove that person. So when he fainted on the ground, on the floor there, then they were almost ready to beat him. And all of a sudden, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was the superintendent, or he had something, he was like the guru of the king, I forget exactly his position, but he stopped the guards, and then he examined Mahaprabhu, because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, being as knowledgeable as he is, he knows all the symptoms from Shastra of the ecstatic Ashta Sattvic Vikar transformations of the body due to spiritual ecstasy. And when he examined him, and he, of course, saw that some very slight breath was still there, then it confirmed, yes. And he saw the extent, because there are 5 different stages of the manifesting of these ecstatic symptoms. And like Sudipta means blazing, like a fire. When you make a fire, then it's blazing. And all the symptoms were present on his body in blazing degree. So then he instructed that he should be carried to his house. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya brought him to his own house, you know. And then the next day, well, not the next day, later, Nityananda Prabhu, Mukunda, and a couple of the others, they all arrived, and they went to see Jagannath, and then they heard the news that this young sannyasi had been brought to the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, so then they went there. And Mahaprabhu was still deep in trance, and then they started to do kirtan, and Mahaprabhu came out of that trance. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya for the first time spoke with Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu was only 24 years old at that time, extremely beautiful. And so Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya learned that actually, because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was originally from Navadvip, but he came many years before to Puri. And so there's actually, his village is there in Navadvip. It's called Vidyanagar. Yes, that's where Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had his school, and he was teaching his students. Yeah, and even Nimai Pandit would go there in his youth and defeat all the students of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in logic. So now he learned about the mother and the father of this sannyasi who is named Chaitanya, right? Krishna Chaitanya, that was the sannyasi name, Krishna Chaitanya. And now he had affection for him because he understood that there was actually a village, almost like a family relationship. And so then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya told to Mahaprabhu, oh, I want to help you. You have now taken sannyas, and it will be very difficult for you to keep your vows because you're so physically attractive, and therefore you should hear Vedanta. And that will give you philosophical, like intelligence and logic and everything like that. So that will help you. I will teach to you Vedanta Sutra. And Mahaprabhu humbly, okay, I would be so very much honored if you would do this. You're such a great personality. So then the story is told about how he tried in the temple of Jagannath, and there were other persons present also, and he tried for 7 days to teach Vedanta Sutra to Mahaprabhu. 7 days. But what was he teaching? He was teaching what he was teaching to all the other sannyasis who came to Puri. The Shankaracharya Shariraka Bhashya is the name of the scripture, the commentary of Shankaracharya, which is my bhat, impersonal. So Mahaprabhu was sitting and hearing. And so like toward the end of that 7 days, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya told, I have been speaking now for 7 days, but I have not had any kind of response at all from you during this time. Only you've been hearing. And so I am not certain if you have been understanding what I have been telling. Then at that point Mahaprabhu told him, actually I know very well Vedanta Sutra, the verses, and the meaning of the verses. But I see that your explanation is covering, like clouds covering the sun, the real, true, apparent, self-apparent meaning is being covered by your explanation. Sarvabhauma, like, how you can say this? So then Sarvabhauma, he said, oh, then you should tell to me. What is your understanding of Vedanta Sutra? And then Mahaprabhu, he began to speak and completely explained the whole Vedanta Sutra perfectly, citing and quoting all the verses with the Vaishnava understanding, perfect understanding, which later became manifest as the commentary by Baladev Vijayabhushan, Govinda Bhashya commentary, right? And even Jiva Goswami also heard from his teacher in where?
In Kashi?
Yeah, in Kashi. He heard the explanation from his teacher, I forget the name. He was there when Mahaprabhu had explained it, you see. So anyway, what happened was, when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya heard his explanation, he was completely shocked. And no human being could give that. And he understood at that point that he must be Bhagavan himself, the absolute Supreme Lord. And then Mahaprabhu actually revealed to him his four-armed form there. And then also in Chaitanya Bhagavad says his six-armed form as well, Sadbhuj. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, on the spot, he composed 100 shlokas spontaneously, glorifying Mahaprabhu, that he is Krishna himself. 100 shlokas, that's called Sarvabhauma Shataka. Shataka means 100 slokas. And then he also, in course of the next few days, composed 3 different shlokas. And the devotees heard them and wrote them down. But otherwise he didn't want them to be distributed. And that's why we have those shlokas from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya glorifying Mahaprabhu. He also wrote that song that we have in the songbook.
Why he didn't want them distributed?
I don't remember. I'd have to look that up again. But he wrote them and then he tore it up. But the devotees had already seen. So we have that shloka. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Siksharkam Eka Purusha Purana. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dhari Kripam Budhir Yastamaham Prapadye. There's he's revealing who Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is. And he says, Nija Bhakti Yoga Siksharkam Eka Purusha Purana. Purusha Purana means the ancient, eternal, supreme personality of Godhead has now appeared in the form of Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And what is he giving? He's giving Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. He is teaching renunciation and knowledge through bhakti. And Nija Bhakti Yoga means his own. Nija means his own. So through instructing his own Bhakti Yoga, he is giving all knowledge, all renunciation, and actually he is that ancient Supreme Lord who is full of unlimited causeless mercy. Kripam Budhir Yak Paradukuduk. No, Kripam Budhir Yastamaham Prapadye. I surrender at his lotus feet, who is most merciful Supreme Lord. So, in the course of his conversion, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, I'm going to end now with this last point. In the course of his conversion, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he became so cleansed and purified from, he did not even want to identify with the word mukti, which means liberation. Because Mayavadis are always saying mukti, 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 right? So here, now, Sarvabhauma is saying, he's talking about how his heart has been transformed. He's telling this to Mahaprabhu due to the bliss of Krishna Bhakti, because Mahaprabhu has given him prem, you know. And then he says, this verse, Tarkik Shrigala Sange Beu Beu Kori. So this means, I was howling like a jackal in the association of logicians. Shrigala actually means jackal, right? Tarkik Shrigala Sange. I was in the association of these jackal-like logicians, and they're going, Beu Beu. That's the word for the sound of the jackal, right? They were just howling, right? And I was wasting my time in useless logic and argument, but now, with the same mouth, I am constantly chanting the names of Sri Krishna and Hari. So, in that way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has shown that the association of logicians is to be completely given up. Okay, so now, even though it started very late, but I went to visit our godbrother, Brajendra Nandan Prabhu, so that's why I was late in starting, but this is our class for today. Gaur Premanandi. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Sri Upadeshamritam ki jai, Srila Rupa Goswami Pada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Vancha Kalpatarupash, Griva Sindhi Vancha, Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavi. This phone? Oh no, it's his phone. Okay. Can you stop the video and share?